All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're cracking open some ancient texts that paint a totally different picture of our past. We're talking about a history filled with travelers from the stars, divine visitors, and incredible journeys of the soul that cross entire universes. So let's get into it.
So the source material we're looking at today kicks things off with a pretty wild question. What if our planet wasn't always so isolated? What if, way back in the distant past, Earth was actually a common destination for beings from other worlds?
And that's the core idea here. The picture these texts are painting is that Earth wasn't some lonely outpost in the cosmos. Nope, it was a known spot on the map, a place where these celestial beings could visit, interact with our world, and then just head back home.
Okay, so if we're going with that, the very next question has to be, who exactly were these visitors?
Well, we're not just talking about one type of being here. The accounts mention this whole cast of characters. You've got celestial nymphs, the Apsaras, who would apparently just pop down to Earth for a swim in our rivers. You have these incredibly powerful sages, like Narada Muni, who could just zip between different worlds in the blink of an eye. Then there are the heavy hitters, deities like Indra and Varuna. And, get this, even beings like Ganga Devi, who were supposedly sent here to Earth almost as a penance to work off some bad karma.
But hang on, you might be wondering, how could a being from some other, higher or more refined reality even survive here? The texts describe this fascinating piece of tech called a parama light sphere. You can almost think of it like a personal anti-gravity force field that protected them from our much denser physical environment.
Okay, so they could be here, but that just raises an even bigger question, right? How in the world did they get here across such unbelievable distances?
Well, according to these texts, the answer is some seriously advanced technology, these amazing aerial vehicles they called Vimanas. And probably the most legendary one of them all is the Pushpaka Vimana, which was said to belong to Ravana.
And listen, we are not talking about your average airplane here. This thing was on a whole other level. The Pushpaka Vimana could supposedly travel between multiple realms, these different worlds. It could literally change its size depending on how many people needed a ride. And here's the kicker. It could apparently make its passengers ethereal, basically turning them into the element of air itself for the journey.
So what was the power source? No engine, no fuel. The source calls it sankalpa, and it's basically creation by pure thought. A soul with enough power could just generate an intention, a thought form, and that energy wave would literally pull atoms from the air to create a physical vehicle. The passengers would then merge with the vehicle state, and when they were done, another thought would just dissolve the whole thing right back into the atmosphere. I mean, that is some seriously mind-bending stuff.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. This wasn't just a one-way tourism trip, with beings coming to Earth. The texts describe a deep, two-way connection between our little planet and the stars themselves.
Yeah, this idea of a two-way street is just fascinating. They talk about beings from as far away as the Andromeda galaxy visiting and then going back. But they also tell stories of major celestial figures who actually started out right here on Earth before heading out to the cosmos. Dhruva, who became the pole star, and the Saptarishis, the seven sages we see as the Big Dipper, they all supposedly began their journeys here.
And just when you think it can't get any wilder, the source material drops this bombshell, which apparently comes from a divine vision. It claims that the pole star we see up in the sky, well, it's not just a star. It's an entirely different universe, one that is way, way bigger and brighter than our own.
So all this physical travel, the Vimanas, it's all incredible. But it brings us to what these texts say is the most fundamental kind of travel there is. It's not about vehicles anymore. It's about the journey of consciousness itself, the journey of the soul.
I mean, we think of light speed as the ultimate cosmic speed limit, right? Well, forget that. According to these accounts, a soul with even a tiny bit of power, a single kala, can cross an entire universe in a trillionth of a second. The speed is basically instantaneous.
And apparently there are a couple of ways you can do this. Kind of like choosing between a hyper-fast teleport and a slightly slower scenic route. The fastest, most efficient way is formless travel, or nirakari, where the soul is just a pure point of light. The other way is in a subtle body, or sukshma, which lets you interact more, but, well, it's slower and takes up more energy.
To make this feel less like just some abstract concept, the source shares this really intimate, personal story. Bapuji talks about his own mother and says she would literally leave her physical body for up to 3 days at a time to go travel in other realms. He says they would just
take care of her body, and wait for her to come back.
Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. This all sounds like fascinating mythology, right? Ancient stories. Well, this is where things take a sharp turn and connect all of these ancient ideas to a very real, very modern anthropological puzzle.
So let's jump from ancient India to West Africa and talk about a people called the Dogon. For centuries, this tribe has passed down sacred, traditional knowledge about the stars that seems, well, completely impossible for them to have.
Okay, look at this. This is where it gets really strange. You have to pay attention to the dates here. For hundreds of years, the Dogon have known that the star Sirius has a tiny, invisible companion star, Sirius B. They knew it was made of super dense matter, and they even knew its precise 50-year elliptical orbit. Modern astronomy didn't confirm any of this until the 1860s and the 1920s, and only with incredibly powerful telescopes.
So, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? How on earth did they know this? How did an ancient tribe with no modern astronomical tools have such specific, accurate data that our own science would take centuries to catch up to?
And when you ask the Dogon elders themselves, their answer is stunningly simple, and it's direct. They say their knowledge wasn't discovered, it was given to them by beings who traveled to Earth from the Sirius star system. And just like that, we're brought full circle, right back to where we started.
And that just leaves us right here, with this one massive question to chew on. When we look at all this, these ancient texts, the mysteries like the Dogon, are we just looking at really elaborate myths and a rich imagination? Or could we be seeing the faint, forgotten echoes of a lost chapter of our own history?